We're all trying to log off more, including the brands, and that includes even inherently online brands like Pinterest. So with everyone trying to spend more time offline, how do you craft a marketing campaign that satisfies this urge in our still very online world? Welcome to Marketing Brew Weekly. I'm Jenny Mywin, reporter at Marketing Brew.
I'm Kelsey Sutton, editor.
And I'm Katie Hicks, senior reporter. Let's get into it. All right, so touching grass, so hot right now.
So sexy.
I talked to Pinterest recently about their 2026 brand campaign, which is all about getting people to log off, which it's kind of a weird concept for a social media platform.
Mm-hmm. Like when you first say that, I'm like, of all brands, of all companies telling me to log off, a social media company doing that feels just like not, like inherently against what they're trying to do.
I'm immediately suspicious.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I'm like, what?
Why?
The catch. What's going on?
Yes.
It's an interesting campaign. They started with a brand campaign, kind of a like anthem video where it's this young girl and she's like asking people like, how did people prove they were having fun if they weren't posting about it? And kind of makes you feel like, I don't know, like introspective about the whole thing. You're like, oh my God, so true. Like there was a world where it wasn't so performative all the time. And then they followed that anthem video up with another campaign video that is basically showing these girls who are like scrolling and then they see a picture of a concert and then they're like, oh, I actually want to get off my phone and go be outside and go to a concert. So that was kind of the whole idea behind this campaign. I talked to Sarah Polak, who's one of the VPs of the company, and she was saying that she, the whole thing is really about like, you go to Pinterest for inspiration. You go here because you're like, look at all the fun stuff I could be doing. You probably click an ad while you're there and then you go and go do that thing. So, I mean, what do you guys think about this concept?
Is that really how you guys actually use Pinterest? Like, I get the premise behind it. They're like, okay, like you find inspiration here and then you go do the thing. But maybe this is a me problem. I do find myself like scrolling for inspiration and continuing to scroll for inspiration. Like I'm curious how the company can actually encourage me or any user to be like, okay, move from like being on our platform to actually being outside. How do you guys experience it?
I feel like I really think this is selling the utility of the platform. It's not a time waster. It's an it's inspiration for your IRL life. You know what I mean? Like it is inspiration for you to, ideally for Pinterest, buy that outfit and then go to a concert or paint your room the color that or do whatever. I mean, I feel like Pinterest is so much about inspiration for this kind of aspirational life. Like you're almost like looking for clues for the type of life you want to build for yourself. And so I like the idea of kind of using that as kind of a framework for, we're not here to make you scroll forever and ever and ever. Like we're here for you to find something, find it, make it useful, and then get on with it. Again, whether or not, like sometimes it is sort of 10 p.m. and I'm watching a show and also on
It's
Pinterest,
the perfect show watching app at the same time.
But again, it's kind of selling this different type of utility. And I think that it really resonates, I think, in an era where people are so aware of how much time they're spending on their phones, their devices, on short form video, etc. I think people have this heightened awareness of it. So when there's a platform that's saying like, you don't have to spend all your time with us, it's okay. I kind of think that feels more honest when there are platforms that are like, it's okay. And then meanwhile, everything that's designed about the platform is to keep you scrolling and like locked in, dead-eyed.
Yeah. I do think something that's notable about Pinterest is that I can't remember which particular leader at the company, but someone is anti like teen usage of social media.
The CEO has been really outspoken about like being in support of social media bans for kids under 16. I think overall, like in addition to that, it's just like a way of Pinterest setting itself apart from other social media platforms. I feel like every platform, whether it's TikTok or YouTube with like shorts, Instagram with reels, they're encouraging short form video and like endless scrolling. And Pinterest is saying, we don't have that. We're going to say we're different. I mean, the executives from like Meta and all these other platforms are like on trial right now in a lot of states defending themselves, saying like, yeah, no, it's not a bad thing for kids to be using our platforms. So Pinterest is not only saying like, we don't want kids on here, we also don't want you to like spend all your time on here scrolling and like wasting your life away. So from a marketing angle, I think they're just trying to say like, hey, we're not like other social media platforms.
Yeah, it sets them apart for sure. I think one of my first like immediate suspicions, as you put it, Kelsey, is like, okay, what you're telling users to get offline, how do your advertisers react to that? Because obviously if you're an advertiser on Pinterest, you are inherently online. You are on Pinterest's online platforms. I'm curious when they're putting out this campaign to be like, we get it. We know everyone else wants to be offline. Are advertisers like feeling good about that? Are they like, okay, yes, like the time that they do spend online is good time and that will then better reflect on my partnership with Pinterest and my presence on this platform? Or are they like, no, there's literally going to be less eyeballs on this platform because you're telling your users to literally not log on or like spend less time on there, which decreases the chances that you will actually come across that advertiser's ad. I don't know. I'm curious how people or how advertisers are reacting to that.
I mean, the VP that I spoke with at Pinterest was saying that they're focused on ad clicks. And I think their idea with all of this is like the idea of quality, not quantity. So it's less about like how many people are like spending hours and hours and hours scrolling Pinterest. It's more about, are the ads high quality? You know, do they lead to conversions? Are people clicking on these branded posts and still getting inspiration or buying something from it? They're seeing an outfit they like, they click on the branded post, they buy that outfit. Like, I think it's more about making sure that whatever they're putting in front of people is actually resonating as opposed to like making sure people are scrolling forever and seeing as many ads as possible.
Yeah, having it actually be worth it for the time that they're spending on there. Pinterest also started this whole thing with a phone-free experience at Coachella, correct?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit more about that, Katie. What did they do?
They had people line up and like put their phones into a Yonder case. Yonder is a brand that like they have like phone cases that can like seal it. And I'm not sure if it's magnetic or if it's like a special key that you need, but it basically locks your phone. And then they went inside and then people were able to like do arts and crafts. They had analog cameras, inside so people could take pictures still even though they didn't have their phones. It was just like this whole thing. And then I think it just generated this sense of FOMO. People were like, what's going on in there? I have no idea because no one's posting about it until after the fact when they did partner with a few creators who went phone free for the weekend. Quen Blackwell is one of them. And she posted a recap video after the end of Coachella and was like, here's everything I did. Here's what the activation was like. Here's what Coachella was like without my phone on me. And I think their whole thing was not getting focused on in the moment, feeling like you need to share everything. But with that being said, it leads to a question of like, okay, you have no UGC from your event, so.
But they still had creator content. I think that's what's interesting about that particular activation is like, yes, it was phone free and that was like the buzzy thing about it, but they planned from the very start that like Quen was gonna make a video afterwards. And I went and I watched the video and it's not like it's just her sitting and talking to the camera. Like she still has footage of her at Coachella itself, photos, her hanging out with her friends. She has footage of her inside the Pinterest activation too. So like, yes, as a partner of Pinterest, like Pinterest took her phone, but someone was capturing the content. Like she has a team or her friends or whatever it is.
I think she was using a camcorder for the weekend, if I remember right. Yeah, like she had like a way of like still capturing content, but she didn't post it in the moment. It was all about like after the fact and recapping.
Being reflective.
Yeah.
Being in the moment.
I mean, when I spoke to Sarah Polak, she was saying that like they were definitely nervous about this whole thing. They were like, no UGC, no ability to track a hashtag and look at like who's been posting about the event and like show the executives above them. Like, look, it immediately generated a ton of interest. But she did say after the fact, they had a increase in earned media attention and social conversations around the activation. And 70% of the social comments they saw were about going phone free and like in a very positive way.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I feel like there's something so interesting about this tension of doing something offline and IRL that maybe is not designed for like maximum UGC, maximum like, social presence, but still be able to kind of show your work and prove the value of it. I think that what social does really well is it can give you a lot of metrics, but like, are all of those metrics like worth it? Are reposts like, what does that mean?
What's the value of a hashtag in 2026?
Right. What's the value of a hashtag? What's the value of like reshares or comments, et cetera? And I think a lot of marketers are kind of tasked with this challenge, right? Like executives want to know, like, is it working, et cetera. And then there's kind of this like amorphous sense of brand building and goodwill that's kind of hard to measure. And like we have all these proxies, and I think social like gives you a lot of proxies that feel really good because they are quantitative. You can say, look at this number. But I think brand building is an exercise that can be kind of hard to measure. And I think that some marketers have to kind of embrace that uncertainty and say, I think this is going to be worth it because the goodwill that we build with our customer base by saying, log off, do something fun, and we're there in the background.
Socialize, go meet people.
Yeah, we're facilitating this, but we're not, we're not making it like a content farm experience. Like, I think that can go a really long way. It's just really hard to know if it's working and for how long. And so I think it's just like requires a little bit of a risk.
Yeah.
There's definitely that nervousness. And I think that, when you talk to Pinterest and them saying that, it's like, of course, because you're not going to get the things that have been so relied upon. But again, a bunch of posts about something, does that do what you want it to do for a brand in 2026?
Yeah, I feel like it is like a long game play, and like saying to your point, it is about like Pinterest is different and we're the healthy social media, because I feel like this isn't original to Pinterest. Like this idea of like signing off and reducing your screen time and all this stuff is like very much in the zeitgeist right now. We're seeing people use like Brick and like all these phone apps that limit how much time you can spend doom scrolling. And like in addition to that, we're also seeing other brands sponsor in-person meet and greets and run clubs and hobby-based groups. Like there was a article recently about like rummy club groups getting sponsored in the Wall Street Journal. And it's like, it's such an interesting time, because I feel like people are looking for community. They're looking to get off their phones. They're feeling isolated when they're sitting on their phones scrolling all day. And it's like, brands are noticing that, and they're kind of tapping into that either in their messaging or in the events that they sponsor.
I think those particular events are interesting because I think it makes a lot of sense for like what happens after the event, depending on the type of brand you are. Something like, it's pronounced Rummy Cube? What is the game?
I think it's Rummy Cub, is it?
Rummy Cub? Can we ask our producers?
Mahjong, also an option. Anyways, all of these games that you're playing, like if you make a thing that like you can actually use while you're at the event, I feel like I can see the connection there where like you're making friends, you're feeling good at the event, and you're like, oh, I made friends like playing this game. Let me go buy this game so I have it in my house to continue doing this. When it's like a more amorphous thing like Pinterest, or I also talked to Zoom a little bit back, and they were like, oh yes, experiential is so big, like we're doing our own experiential thing, and they basically did like a pop-up to be like, reclaim your lunchtime. Like nice, but like what happens after the event that like keeps that brand top of mind or keeps someone coming back as a repeat customer? Because I think I agree that there's so much value in creating this like goodwill and like trusting that people will have a good time at your event and creating the space for them to do that. But like, where do you go from there as a brand once they meet their friends or they have a really good time? Like, it is a long-term play, but like what happens next? I'm really curious, what are the KPIs like these brands are measuring up against, like beyond something like foot traffic and how successful the event actually is? Because like, okay, people had a good time, they're aware that your brand put this on. What happens now? Do they talk about it on social? Or are we just circling right back to being online? Maybe.
Or ideally, they go to the store if you're a retailer and they buy your clothes. Like I know I talked to some retailers recently about how like Gen Alpha loves the mall, and like they're investing in-person experiences in their actual stores. So it's like making sure there are phone chargers in the store, making sure the seating is comfortable and people want to actually hang out there, hosting concerts in their stores. So it's like this idea of gathering in person can have the tangible effect of like just increasing foot traffic too.
Yeah, definitely. That's so funny to think of like going to like your local like mall Claire's or something and being like, yes, I'm going to see my favorite artist perform a little set there.
I mean, I grew up near the Mall of America, and there were always concerts in that mall.
That makes sense.
Not like big names, but there were concerts.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's a good spot to gather people. There's a lot of space, I'm sure.
I feel like retailers might be kind of in the position to kind of push the envelope a little bit in this space and kind of redefine what like good community engagement kind of looks like. You already have the space. Like if you have a store anywhere, you can do it.
Yeah.
And for a lot of retailers, they have footprints not just in big cities. I think one of the big challenges for a brand that maybe doesn't have any like retail footprint is the question is like, where do we actually do a pop-up? And I think a lot of them are big events and big cities where there's lots of people.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that was so attractive about social stuff at the beginning of it was just how democratic it was. You could reach anybody in any place, like in the most remote place in the country, as long as they had an internet connection or enough cell data to watch your video or see your post, like you could reach them, right? Which was valuable. But I think, again, that question of like, how do you engage people in real life or just encourage them to spend more quality time on the internet and ultimately less of it? You know, there's inherent limits. And I think that retailers are just like retail brands just have such an opportunity to redefine what that in-store experience looks like and what community building looks like inside the store. They already have it.
You're one step
know,
ahead.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
There's also an opportunity to like get ahead of the curve with this too, because like if you're doubling down on no, endless scrolling is perfect, and people start deleting the apps that they were endlessly scrolling on, then like, are you going to reach them anyways?
Yeah.
No. So it's like, if you're saying like, hey, we're with you guys, like let's limit it and let's meet in person and like offer you the opportunity to meet somebody and like become friends or see your favorite creator or watch a concert, whatever. It's like, well, maybe you're generating goodwill in a way that other brands are missing out on because they're not doing that.
I agree that retailers are a step ahead in that sense because they have the space already. I do think that some brands that don't have a physical footprint are thinking about it too. It reminds me of a conversation I had with the CMO of MCO Beauty, who they are sold in retailers like Walmart, but they don't have like MCO Beauty stores. And they did a campaign a little bit back where they partnered with an escape room brand called Escapology. And in our conversation, Meredith Rojas, the CMO, told me that she specifically was thinking about like, how do you do community building events and IRL stuff, which everyone seems to be focused on right now in not just New York or LA, because those cities see so much of that like it almost doesn't even feel like that special or unexpected when you're like, oh yeah, like this weekend there's 17 brand pop-ups that you could check out if you wanted to. But like if you do it in like a random town in Ohio, they don't get that kind of brand attention as much. And if you partner with something that for this particular campaign, it was an escape room chain that had locations across the country, that kind of allows you to be in a physical space that has a footprint across the country, even though MCO Beauty as a brand doesn't have that. I think that's a really smart way to be like, okay, like community exists outside of these massive metropolitan areas.
Well, even the Netflix house that you went to in Philly, I feel like that was tapping into a demo that's like maybe more of a secondary market. I mean, Netflix is everywhere, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's not, to your point, New York or LA. It's like it's going into some of those other cities. It also reminds me of, this was a couple of years ago, but I talked to 818 Tequila and they were doing like a college tour.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like hosting events that were very influencer-like, but for everyday college kids in many different college towns around the country. And the whole point was like tapping untapped markets. And I feel like it generated a lot of goodwill for that reason, because these people are like, no one really comes here and hosts these things. We see these things online.
Yeah.
But thank you for bringing it to our town.
I feel like that type of like comment, I see a lot for like beauty brands, because the infamous Tarte trip, like I feel like there's a lot of like legacy energy put towards taking influencers on trips and getting that social energy out. But I see a lot of comments that are like, I would prefer a brand that like reinvests this into people that don't get to experience this all the time, whether that's like a regular person, which also happens in the beauty world or elsewhere, or just like, yeah, like bringing it to places that don't get to see this kind of action as much. I feel like there's a level of unexpected there, which I think also relates to like why we talked about Pinterest in the first place. Like it feels unexpected that a very online company that their livelihood exists online is telling you to get offline. I think there's like a shock factor there that makes you stop and think. I'm curious if eventually people will like poke holes in it to be like, well, you're still an online platform.
I mean, it's kind of like the greenwashing conversation too, where brands were like, we're doing our best, but then people are like, you're not doing it great though.
Right.
And like, there's always going to be an ability to poke holes, but I do think overall, like we're seeing this even with like dating events too. Like there's a big discourse right now about people having a lot of fatigue with dating apps, and like brands are hosting meet and greets and like speed dating events and things like that. Audible's hosting one this weekend. It's called like Audible, like dating for like audiobook lovers or something like that. And it's like, okay, well, Audible doesn't have like a tangible retail space or whatever to host this thing, but they're still doing it because they realize that people are looking for a way to meet somebody that's not necessarily like requiring scrolling.
Oh my gosh. And the reward, imagine having in your vows you met at the Audible event, you know, like, do you know what I mean? Like that.
We'd like to thank Audible.
Right. But the thing is, I'm like, I do think there's so much, people just are craving that connection. And I truly think that like going back to Pinterest, if you are looking at your phone and you're like, ugh, I spend so much time on TikTok, delete, whatever. But Pinterest has made you think like, you know what, they're not that bad. I spend some time on there, but like, I kind of know what I'm up against when I open up that app and I know what I'm there for. Like if they're not deleted when somebody goes, I'm like removing all social from my phone, like that's a win for them.
Yeah.
And so I feel like kind of getting out ahead of it. And I think same for brands who are saying we're going to do things in person that are not just about photos and videos and like content creation. Like consumers are smart. They can feel that, you know? So it's like, if you go to the Audible event and you meet the love of your life, like, I hope so.
Yeah.
And that's good for the brand. You're going to think fondly about them forever. And I think as long as brand, like, I kind of think it's almost like the opposite of when we were talking about brands becoming entertainment companies. But I think there's the similar DNA, which is like brands recognize that if you are going to spend any time with them, it should be like time well spent. And so if they're kind of like, okay, well, we have to like do something really good on social so that if you spend 2 minutes watching our video, you don't feel like it was a waste of your life. Similarly, if you're doing stuff in person, like, the onus is on the brand to like make it worth your while to go in person. But I think people are much more coming to that with much more maybe fresh eyes and like less cynicism because they're like, I'm so glad there's a hiking event and it's sponsored by a sunscreen brand. Like you get to use some sunscreen, you're meeting a friend, whatever. I don't even know if this exists in real life, but it should.
But it kind of reminds me, like, I remember when I lived in DC for a little bit and I moved there and I had nothing to do. And I was like, oh, Outdoor Voices near me is hosting these like fun events. And I went to a couple of them and I was like able to meet some people in the neighborhood. And like, I think sometimes it's not like the end all be all, like, let's wait for brands to solve this problem that everyone's lonely and whatever. But sometimes they can fill a void. And it's like, it's nice when they use their space or they like find an opportunity to give people an experience that maybe they otherwise wouldn't be able to access.
Yeah, like they ultimately are providing a solution of some sort. It's just like who is choosing to take part in it and like walk away potentially feeling like that was a good thing that they did with their Saturday afternoon or whatever it is.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you meet friends there, you're always going to be like, oh my God, we met at Outdoor Voices. How funny is that?
R.I.P.
Yeah.
I know this but R.I.P.
But like that, if you are a brand and you know are still around, like there's a
goodwill generated.
Exactly. And I think that again, when we talk about measurement though, like that's very hard to capture. It's very hard to quantify, but I think it's really valuable for brands to try to figure that out and also try to convince people that it's worth, like, try to convince their executive team, their colleagues that it's worth that investment because again, it's hard to measure that. It's hard to give an exact number to that, but I think that's kind of priceless.
Yeah. Maybe creating like a lifelong customer in that, but we're in a very like short-term thinking economy where it's all about the next quarter and how many results you saw from a campaign immediately. And it's like, if you're thinking about the long game and thinking about just like building affinity, sometimes you don't get those like immediate data points.
It reminds me of the trend that you wrote about, Katie, too, of like brands becoming lifestyle brands. Like I feel like if you are able to convince your executives of the value of this, it's like thinking beyond just the like point of purchase or like the getting them to come to your store the one time. It's like if they have a good experience here, they will continue to think about it and it becomes a part of their lifestyle. If they meet their best friend or the love of their life, it's like, oh, like it's a point in my story, in my lifestyle that like this happened at the Outdoor Voices event. I love that we keep using Outdoor Voices as an example.
Honestly, it also makes me think of like brands like Costco that have no social media presence, but people love them and they go back there because they provide an experience that people really enjoy and then they tell their friends and they have like such customer loyalty. And I think other brands would be thrilled if they could get that kind of loyalty too.
Yeah. I think there is like a piece of like realism that I keep coming back to too, is that like even as like we are encouraged to do all these things offline and the brands are even encouraging it, like we still do live in a very online world and that is not going away in my opinion. And I think when you play the long game, you very well might get these people talking about your brand online eventually, whether that's like if they are a creator, if they're just like yapping to their friends like on their Instagram stories or whatever it is, like you probably will get an online footprint eventually. It's just you can't attribute that to the event that you put on.
I mean, the Rizzler was formed from the Costco
so
guys.
true, so true. Wow.
You never know who's going to make content about your brand, whether you like it or not.
That's the stardom we could be aspiring
Lasting
to.
brand power.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm curious, what are your guys' favorite kind of like offline activities?
Well, I just got back from a long trip to the Southwest and particularly Arizona. I feel like hiking, outdoor nature events, like truly touch grass in an extremely literal way. I feel like that is, maybe it's just because the weather's nice and like I got 1 milligram of vitamin D, but I
The
really
sun
think
was on your
there's so much
skin.
value in that. Like people, especially, they're like, this is so much better than looking at my phone. Oh my gosh. So I feel like there's a huge opportunity. And I think that that really can resonate across the entire country. You know what I mean? Like you can go hiking literally anywhere.
Yeah.
Like you do not have to be in a major urban center.
Yeah,
to
that's
do that.
quite literally the whole premise of a brand campaign I wrote about recently, Merrill. Like their thing
Yes,
is like
yeah,
it
yeah.
starts outside and outside is everywhere. It doesn't have to be the great outdoors, but like it's accessible to everyone.
It can be the mid outdoor.
Yes, it could be just very boring, like
The good
steps
outdoors.
outside your door.
Yeah, the okay outdoor.
Just get out there. Yeah.
I'd say the same, just like getting outside and like
Yeah.
even traveling too. I'm very much like an intentional. I feel like my screen time is like at its lowest when I'm traveling because I'm just like running around some places you don't have Wi-Fi, you're international, whatever. It's like it's very like humbling. I think you're like, oh, I'm actually doing something, and I'm
Yeah.
not just like watching other people do something.
Yeah. I think I really like learning things. Like I love like a class. Like I have been like baking a lot of cakes lately, and I love when like when brands like will do like come bake a cake with us. Like we'll teach you how to decorate this.
Oh, that's such a fun idea because
Yeah.
people want that too. Like they want experiences that like are lasting. And I feel like learning something
Yes.
new is such a positive experience for so many people.
Yeah, I feel like I'm walking away with like I like learned a life skill or like a fun skill or a hobby that I could expand upon or whatever it is. So lots to think about here. Well, thanks so much for joining us. And if you have thoughts, questions, comments, concerns about how to get outside or the brands you want to be seeing, doing more of that stuff, send us an email at mkbw@morningbrew.com, which you can also find in the show notes. And we'll catch you next week.